Welcome children to this session. Today we are going to discuss about another lesson of your 9th standard physics, that's force and Newton's laws of motion. Regarding this children, you have studied a basic about this lesson in your 8th standard already. So let's see what's about this force and Newton's laws of motion. To begin with, let me take up the word force. It's a very common term that we have been using it in our day-to-day life situations, like pushing the door, opening the drawer, twisting, stretching, pulling it or lifting it. There are a number of actions we do which involves force. Therefore, these activities can be grouped into two categories, such as one may be either push or another may be a pull. So therefore, the simplest definition of force can be it is a push or pull upon an object. That I have given you. Simplest definition which you have learned already in your 8th standard. It is a push or pull on an object. The force comes into existence, the interaction between two objects. How this can be explained? Let me take an example children here. Two boys, A and B. They play football. Boy A interacts with the ball by kicking it towards B. Boy B interacts with the ball by stopping it and interacts with the ball by kicking it again too. Therefore, the interaction force comes into existence when there is interaction between two objects. Therefore, this is another important second point in this definition part. It is a push or pull on an object. It is due to, or force is due to, interaction between two objects. We have seen the definition part. Now, we know force, it is a physical quantity, it is a vector quantity which has both magnitude and direction. Therefore, SI unit of force, SI unit is Newton. There is a particular way of writing this Newton children. You have to begin with small letter or just this capital N. Either of the one you can take it as SI unit. International System of Unit, you know that? It has started in the year 1960 in France, where they suggest a common style of measurement throughout the world. Therefore, it was decided SI unit of this force is Newton. It has to be written like this or N, just capital N. Then the next part, which are the effects of force. When force is applied on an object, it can cause many effects. Suppose if the object is at rest, force can make the body move by applying the force, by pushing it. That's the first one. Force can move a stationary object. A stationary vehicle is there, we apply force, then the vehicle moves. The second one, force can stop a moving vehicle. Vehicle moves with certain speed. When brakes are applied, it's nothing but the force. Brakes are applied, the vehicle comes to stop. Okay, a football comes to us, kicked by somebody. You apply the force and stop it. The third effect, change the speed. a player kicks a football towards you, you can change the direction of movement of the ball by kicking it, by applying force. Comes like this in the cricket match you have seen. Okay, bowler comes this way, it can hit any direction it wants. Okay, therefore, the movement of the body can be changed by the application of force. The fourth one, change the speed, change the direction we have seen. The third one, we can increase or decrease the speed of a moving object. Okay, by giving acceleration, velocity increases. By applying force, velocity decreases. By giving acceleration, velocity can be increased. By applying force, it can be slowed down. Therefore, velocity can be increased or decreased by the application of force. The fourth one we have seen, change in the shape. Balloon. It is blown, you can change the shape. The physical shape changes by application of the force. Chapati making, the shape of the duff changes. Okay, it was in the flour, it was mixed, it was made into balls, then using pressure, when it is pressed, the shape changes. Therefore, children, force can cause these are the effects. I'll repeat, force, children. It is a very common term that we have seen in our day-to-day life situations. Simplest definition is this. Then its SI unit. Then effects of force. Write down. Children, now we are going to discuss another very important concept of this lesson. Listen carefully, children. I have taken this illustration now. Consider a ball is at rest on the ground. Do you think any of the force is acting on it? If the ball is rest on the ground, remember, there will be 4 types of forces that will be acting on the ball. Which are those 4 forces? We are going to see. We are going to see what is that net force. Based on that, we are going to learn balanced forces, unbalanced forces. Children, listen. I have taken a ball which is at rest on the ground. Remember, 4 types of forces will be acting on the ball. The first one is force of push. When a person kicks it, it moves on the ground. Then after some times it gets stopped because the ground offers resistance. We call it as nothing but the force of friction. It is nothing but the force which opposes the motion of another object. Force of friction. This friction force offered by the ground, the ball comes to rest. Therefore, the force of push, this is force of friction. Remember, these two will be in the opposite direction. Force which opposes the motion of another object, therefore opposite motion. The third is force of gravity. That is nothing but weight of the ball. Instead of the ball, if we take any box, then it will have a weight. Therefore, it's nothing but the weight which is directed towards the center of the earth. Therefore, this is force of gravity towards the center of the earth. Then, the fourth type of force we call force of reaction exerted by the earth. There is a law in the 9th standard, gravitational law of gravitation, which says that every object in the universe will attract one another or will exert one another with a force. Therefore, the football exerts some force on the ground the ground also will exert some force on the football, which is nothing but force of reaction, children. Or we can say it is a normal force. Then another important concept that you need to remember in this force of gravity is always will be equal to the force of reaction. In these two cases, the value of these two will be numerically equal. Then movement of a body, movement of the ball depends on these two forces. Remember. Therefore, we come to the conclusion that there will be four types of forces will be acting on an object even which is at rest. Force of push, force of friction, force of gravity and force of reaction. Then we will see what is called net force. Children, let me consider another illustration here. If two forces acting on an object in the same direction, then net force is equal to. Imagine there is a box. Two children started pushing in the same direction. Person A, person B. These two children, students, are pushing it in the same direction. Person A pushes the box with 5 Newton of force. He is pushing it with 10 Newton of force. Therefore, obviously, the box will move. Then the net force is nothing but 10 Newton plus 5 Newton, which is nothing but 15 Newton. Understand this, children. When two or more forces acting on an object in the same direction, then the sum of their numerical values will be considered. They will be the forces total will be added. Consider the second case. Same box I have taken, but in this case the forces are acted in opposite direction. Person A pushes this table with 5 Newton of force. Person B pushes this table in opposite with 10 Newton of force. In this case, the net force is calculated, the difference between the forces. The difference, here the sum of the forces. Because it's acting in the same direction, children. Two forces acting opposite each other. Therefore, the net force is the difference between the two. Difference means always greater than 10 minus 5 will be equal to 5 Newton. Net force will be equal to 5 Newton. These are the typical terms that we need to know before we go to balanced and unbalanced forces. It is an important concept, children. Whenever an object stays at rest, there are four types of forces will be acting on it. In this force of gravity always will be equal to its normal force. Therefore, these two get cancel each other. Then the moment decides between force of push and force of friction. If two or more forces acting in the same direction, then the sum is calculated. If two or more forces acting in opposite to each other, then the difference between the two is taken as net force. Consider, children, in the third note, what I have taken is, if equal forces are applied on an object, what is the condition? On this box, 5 Newton of force is applied from one direction, 5 Newton of force is applied opposite to that direction. Therefore, in this case, equal force is applied. It is something like a tug of war where the body remains at rest. Therefore, the net force is equal to 5 minus 5 is equal to 0. The net force will be equal to 0. When the net force is equal to 0, then the object remains at rest, children. it will not change its position. When the net force is not equal to 0, then the object changes its position. The net force, the total force, or the resultant force is resultant force. Based on these three, note what we have taken, seen children today, we are going to define what we call them as balanced and unbalanced force. I have taken balanced force. What do you mean by balanced forces? When an object stays at rest on the ground, for example, what we have seen was a football. 4 types of forces will exist or will exert on the ball. Force of push, force of friction, force of gravity, the normal force. When the net force is equal to 0, then the forces are called balanced forces, which means if the resultant of all the forces, 4 forces we have taken, children, and we have discussed that the force of gravity is equal to the force of reaction. These two will be always equal. Therefore, the remaining these 2 forces are there. Therefore, how the term goes, if the resultant of all the forces acting on that body is equal to 0, then those forces are called balanced forces. The term says, if the resultant of all the forces acting on the body is equal to 0, then the forces are called balanced forces. When balanced forces act on an object, the object will not change its position. Very important thing that you ought to know, children. In this case, the body remains same, remains at rest, does not change its position. To its opposite one, unbalanced forces. Only a small change to be made in this statement, children. If the resultant of all the forces acting on the body is not equal to 0, then those forces are called unbalanced forces. When unbalanced forces act on an object, the object changes its position. These are the 2 things you need to remember, children. So, this is balanced forces, and one more, what we have discussed now is unbalanced. Balanced is, if the resultant of all the forces acting on an object is equal to 0, then the forces are called balanced. Unbalanced means, if the resultant of all the forces acting on the object is not equal to 0, then the forces are called unbalanced forces. During balanced forces, the object does not change its position. During unbalanced forces, the object changes its position. So this is about today's class, children. Write down these things in your point book neatly and try to learn, children. Please go through the text once, children, so that you will come across a number of exercises, small points or small experiments, small activities. Try those things so that you can understand it in a better way. We will see it in the next class. Thank you, children.